Welcome to our podcast series, 5 Questions, 5 Answers, in which we explore recent U.S. trade policies and U.S. trade rules that can affect thousands of companies. We have a goal in mind to help you, the listener, translate the legal into real-world business strategies. My name is Birgit Matthiesen. I'm the Director of North American Manufacturing here at Aaron Fox Schiff in Washington, D.C. I get the easy part. I get to ask the questions, and I get to choose the colleague or the guest I know will have the right answers for you. So in the next few minutes, I will ask 5 questions that reflect the concerns we've been hearing from business leaders, all who want to understand the rules, but they also need to mitigate their business risk while increasing their bottom line. So let's start.
Today's podcast is notable for its topic and its timing. The topic, it's batteries, car batteries, the most crucial component of electric vehicles. The timing, well, it comes just a day after President Trump ordered yet another import investigation through an executive order. And that investigation could trigger new tariffs on processed critical minerals and their derivatives, essential for the battery, as many of our listeners know. So I have my colleague, Tony Rivera. He's come to the mic on these podcasts in the past. And today he's actually calling in from Atlanta, Georgia. He was invited to speak at the annual battery show. And that show is billed by their organizers as, quote, the Battery Belt's most comprehensive advanced battery event, unquote. But the conference does host corporate leaders, not only from the United States, not only from North America, but from around the globe. So, Tony, you're on the line. Good morning or good afternoon. How are you?
Hey, Bridget, thank you for having me back on the podcast. I'm here in Atlanta at the Battery Show. It's actually the first time they've had it here in Atlanta after various years in Detroit. So they're calling it Battery Show South. It's been quite an impressive turnout, a vibrant environment, a lot of manufacturers, reflecting the strong manufacturing base in the region. It's been, a rewarding experience so far, engaging with industry leaders and exploring the latest advancements in battery technology, and some policy discussion, but also a lot of tariff discussion. So I was happy to be here and share my thoughts on it.
Well, your panel was the title, if I remember, was the first 90 days of the new administration. So given where you are and given the industry and the audience you spoke to, what's the general mood of the conference? What I'd really like to hear, have you been hearing that electric vehicles are here to stay, or are they fading away?
That's a very important question for the industry, Bridget. I would say the mood at the conference was one of cautious optimism regarding the future of EVs and batteries. There's a strong belief that these technologies are here to stay, driven by substantial investment in both vehicles and manufacturing infrastructure. However, I would say that the optimism is tempered by challenges and uncertainties, particularly concerning the costs and risks associated with these projects and moving targets for the tariffs that are being imposed on the industry. Attendees, I would say, were deeply engaged in discussion about both the outlook of the EV projects, considering the manufacturing capacities, complexities of the scaling production. While investment in the battery and EV space continues, it is closely tied to broader issues that need resolution. And these include integration of manufacturing capabilities, capacity to meet the growing demand. And as I noted, the tariff issue is really something that has to be considered because it's impacting these costs. I think despite the announcement of tariff rates, I thought an interesting point was the concept of certainty in the industry. True certainty remains elusive due to the intricate web of trade rules and regulations, at least in my view. Companies must navigate origin rules, classification rules, and exceptions, which are combined of traditional customs rules and new regulations from various agencies. This complexity requires time to develop and understand, posing challenges for manufacturers seeking stability. The term uncertainty, though, shouldn't really be feared in maybe the normal sense, as it can be managed with strategic planning. Companies must accept the inherent risks in decision making and work through tariff rates applied to their operations. This involves making informed business decisions to mitigate costs and optimize strategies. While knowing the costs based on a tariff rate is essential, understanding its application is equally important for effective decision making. I would say, in summary, the conference reflects a commitment to the future of electric vehicles and batteries with ongoing investments and discussions about overcoming challenges. The industry is poised for growth, but it must navigate a complex landscape of trade rules and uncertainties. Companies that position themselves to understand and adapt to these rules will gain a competitive advantage, ensuring their success in the evolving market as these trade pieces are moving.
So let's talk tariffs. There are lots of rules that you mentioned, but there are a lot of tariffs as well. It's not one size fits all. So could you just give us a rundown of what the tariffs emanating from Washington in the last 90 days have been? Those that are now in place, those that have been on pause, and maybe those on the horizon.
Of course, that was a very that question came up as well during the conference, because there are various tariff regimes in place. In the past 90 days, the landscape of tariffs affecting this industry have undergone significant changes, and it's exacerbating the impact from the Section 301 tariffs that had been previously imposed since 2018. Starting from those Section 301 tariffs, these tariffs have a cumulative effect on products from China, with rates ranging from 7.5% to 100%, impacting EVs, semiconductors, and battery parts. The highest rate, 100%, applies to EVs themselves, while semiconductors face a 50% tariff, and most batteries are subject to 25% tariff. Moving into this year, February 4th marked the imposition of a new tariff on China under the International Economic Emergency Power Act, known as IEEPA, initially set at 10% and later increased to 20% in March. This unilateral action by the president added 20% to the supply chain from China, further complicating the trade dynamic. In March, another IEEPA tariff of 25% was introduced for products from Canada and Mexico, with a USMCA exemption allowing qualifying products to bypass this tariff starting March 7th. Then in mid-March, we saw an expansion of the Section 232 steel and aluminum tariffs. These were originally established in 2018 and expanded to derivatives in 2020. But then on March 12th, these tariffs were further increased, applying a 25% rate to steel, aluminum, and manufactured products containing these materials. It's very complex in how these rules work, which involve value breakouts and country of origin reporting requirements, as well as exemptions for certain steel and aluminum that are melted and poured or smelted and cast in the United States. Furthermore, we move on to the end of March, and there was another set of tariffs that became effective on April 3rd. And these were announced to be 25% tariffs on passenger vehicles and light trucks, extending to parts such as engines, transmissions, battery parts, electronics, and tires. And these tariffs for the parts of the automobiles themselves started on May 3rd, adding another complexity of how the industry deals with navigating these different tariffs. After the Section 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum were expanded in mid-March, we saw another announcement affecting automotives and their parts. These tariffs started on April 3rd for passenger vehicles and light trucks, and it was extended to parts of passenger vehicles and light trucks, including battery parts, engines, transmissions, other electronics, and tires. And those tariffs on the parts start on May 3rd, which adds another complexity to the industry of how to navigate between the different tariffs that are at issue. And these also have a 25% rate for these vehicles and parts. Then after the automotive tariffs were announced, we had another announcement, the Rose Garden announcement on April 2nd, which introduced the reciprocal tariffs also under IEEPA that started at 10% for all countries, with exceptions for Mexico, Canada, for tariffs that included Section 232 tariffs, along with certain goods, including critical minerals. These tariffs escalated to between 11 and 50% for over 60 countries and included the EU, but were paused for 90 days before their imposition on April 9th. This pause means imports from most countries face an additional 10% tariff, with exceptions for the US and Canada, which apply the initial 25% IEEPA tariff, and there's USMCA exemptions for that particular rule. China, however, had a unique situation because their increases went from 10% to 34%, then to 84%, and this all before April 9th. And then by April 10th, it reached 125% reciprocal tariff. The result is a baseline tariff of approximately 145% for the supply chain from China, combining the 125% reciprocal tariff, the 20% IEEPA tariff, and Section 301 tariffs ranging from 7.5% to 100%. If subject to Section 232, the application removes the 125% reciprocal tariff, but the 20% IEEPA tariff and the Section 301 tariff remain. Recent developments also include exceptions for semiconductors, along with the critical minerals exception that I noted earlier, and those would exempt you from reciprocal tariffs. There's also certain goods that are linked to future Section 232 investigations that are currently exempt. This would include copper and lumber products. And those type of products, because they're on this exemption list, do not need to face the current reciprocal tariffs. And those investigations will go for about the deadline of the government is about 270 days, but they are acting quickly. So we'll see if they're implemented earlier within that time frame. Because there's various developments, I think it's going to be very crucial for companies to monitor them very closely in these coming months. It'll be essential to understanding the evolving trade landscape and the implications on the electric mobility industry.
And I don't see or hear a lot of certainty in what you just said. Just on the critical minerals, the report is due in the fall, and so from now to the fall, everyone's going to be wondering what the investigation and its recommendations are going to be, which presents a complete new array of uncertainties, both cost and production for the electric vehicle industry, in particular the battery. But with all this turmoil, I have to say, Tony, and I'm not terribly optimistic, but I seem to feel that Washington is, in fact, recognizing the importance of the USMCA and their role and obligations under the USMCA. And as you've mentioned, have exempted from many of these tariffs goods that are coming from Canada and Mexico that can demonstrate that they qualify for USMCA. And for our listeners, just as a quick reminder, the USMCA, of course, is up for review. That's coming next year. And the three capitals are already, if not at the negotiating table, they're talking to each other. And I assume that the chapters on electric vehicles will be quite front and center. But for the USMCA and for batteries, that product and that supply chain for batteries, the USMCA has very special provisions, right, including a dispute on core parts that batteries fall into.
Yeah, that's a great point, Birgit. The USMCA is a very critical aspect when reviewing these tariffs. It's cutting across various tariff regimes, playing a pivotal role in the current tariff landscape, including upcoming negotiations, and offering significant exceptions, which in itself will provide some stability in relation to the various uncertainty that we're currently seeing. It provides a substantial relief from the 25% tariff on products from Canada and Mexico, that IEEPA tariff. It also provides an exemption to the Section 232 automotive tariffs, which would include batteries and other automotive parts. So the USMCA is really crucial during this period of time, offering a framework to mitigate against these tariff risks and uncertainties that various companies are facing in the supply chain. The upcoming USMCA negotiations are also closely tied to the ongoing tariff discussion, with a deadline for countries to negotiate changes. There's going to be a public comment period, which will allow input on rules and industry-specific concerns shaping the future of the agreement. I would say that as the negotiations unfold, companies should understand the current rules, such as the RBC rules and the tariff shift rules, because this will prepare them to understand the potential changes and develop strategies to maintain their evolving compliance under the USMCA, which can offer tariff savings as we're seeing throughout these, not just the most favored nation rate, but also some of these tariffs that are being implemented. The reciprocal tariffs, I think, have also sparked interest in negotiating free trade agreements with the United States, and that could impact the USMCA negotiations that'll be upcoming in the next few months up until the July 2026 deadline for those negotiations. Monitoring these developments is crucial, as simultaneous negotiations may influence the terms and conditions that eventually are negotiated around within the USMCA. Despite these uncertainties, though, I would say that the USMCA remains the most advanced free trade agreement and provides the most stable framework for companies to rely on at this time, in particular, as we're noting how it relates to the various tariff regimes and the exemptions that are being provided. Understanding the current provisions of the USMCA, I think, will really give companies a strategic advantage if they understand the regional value content rules, the labor requirements. It'll give them a leg up in understanding the upcoming negotiations and also in potentially current tariff mitigation. So it really works in both fronts, and companies can use that type of advantage.
And understanding at this point, early on, of what the current provisions require companies to demonstrate, North American content, value, labor, etc. And in the backdrop of these tariffs from Washington, and in the backdrop of what you just said, that there are other capitals who are going to be calling on Washington to formalize their own trade agreements, it's not simply a good strategy moving forward for production, but supply. Like where's the company going to be supplying from, and at what cost? I'm going to ask you my final question. Hopefully it's a fair question at this point. Who knows? But do you think that this is really a turning point for what most of us thought would become a sort of an integrated North American platform, a real North American industry for EV battery and EV manufacturing? Have you been hearing any such speculation on the conference floor?
I think just tying off from our discussion on the USMCA and in relation to the North American platform, I do believe that the USMCA remains a cornerstone of North American production, especially around the various uncertainty with the various trade rules and potential free trade agreement negotiations. Despite questions in upcoming negotiations, the USMCA is still providing a strong baseline for companies to rely on in the North American market. Current exemptions suggest a degree of stability, offering relief for significant tariffs, including those on Canada and Mexico, as well as the Section 232 automotive tariffs. I think the USMCA's established framework offers a very helpful perspective for the North American platform. It allows companies to navigate these uncertainties with a degree of confidence. While it may not be a definitive turning point, the USMCA provides optimism for the North American production, establishing rules and supply chain connections that are crucial for strategic planning.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Tony. I can imagine that you're a pretty popular guy at today's event, and I also know that you've got a pretty busy agenda for the rest of the day. But for our listeners who need and want to stay on top of these tariff news, Tony's already mentioned them. We have on our Aaron Fox Schiff website, you can Google Trump tariff tracker, and there's this very, very helpful chart that explains what tariffs, what the rates are, what the impact is, and what are the timelines. But for those listeners who probably want to speak to Tony directly, I'll tell you, you can reach him you can reach him directly in an email to Antonio Rivera at aaronfoxschiff.com. Tony, thank you very, very much. Safe travels home.
Thank you, Birgit. Thanks for having me again, and look forward to the next podcast.
Oh, thank you very, very much. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest. Smart in your world. For us at Aaron Fox Schiff, it's not simply a tagline.